Hey everybody, welcome to another conversation. 50 conversations with 50 strangers, sort of. I have to make I have to make a confession. And Marla and I both had good intentions. We
We
really
did.
did. We really, really did. We both knew that we were wanting to walk into this room not knowing anything about one another. But somehow in the green room just before this, she told me about she was here a little bit 10 minutes early and she was sort of thinking about like it. And she thought, well, I'll just Google him and or Facebook him or see what happened. And she said, I have two words for you: Pitzer College. Pitzer College, we both went to. Pitzer's a small school in the Claremont colleges that very few people know about and even fewer people go to. I think my class was the whole group of people when I was there was about 700 people that went to Pitzer College.
Yeah, it was maybe a little bit bigger when I maybe 800.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
and she was a few years later, so it wasn't like there were 30,000 people in my year, and so the fact that someone from any time, even close to that, comes from Pitzer College, already I love this woman, and we're gonna want to talk about it, but so we did cheat a tiny little bit, but we still don't. There's so much I still don't know about her. So Marla, welcome to the Mosaic, not the Mosaic podcast. I do another podcast called the Mosaic podcast. I am so confused. I think Pitzer threw me off my moment here. Welcome to 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers, which is now getting close to 100 strangers, which is now starting to have other people that want to have conversations. So the goal is to have thousands and thousands and thousands of conversations with people we don't know. Because I really believe at the heart of it all, when strangers become friends, the world changes.
Absolutely.
And so I just want to make a mention that this series is being sponsored by the Mosaic, which is the book behind me. It's the story of a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And when he asks the adults where his parents are, they tell him they're in a place called heaven. So he sets out in search of the place called heaven, and the people he meets are not the clergymen and the shamans and the medicine men and women and the Aborigines elders. They're common, ordinary people like the trash man and the street worker and the gardener and the juice man and he wonders, why am I meeting these people? And he says, but I'm here with them. Why don't I just sit and talk with them and listen to them? And in listening to him, in every single case, he finds the person he first came up to is totally different than the person he's leaving, because he knows something about them, and they're not at all what he thought they were. And
Mm.
as that happens to him over and over and over and over and over again, what he wonders is, do I see anything the way it is, or do I see everything the way I am? And at that moment, he looks over to his right and he sees a monk unzipping the sky and inviting him to walk through into a parallel reality where he meets the wise one who's the keeper of the mosaic.
Wow.
So, with that in mind, that's the trailer for the book. That's, if anybody feels interested, I'd love you to get it. It's on Amazon. They're the sponsors of our show. And so I want to give due credit to them. But all that being said, let's put aside sponsors, let's put aside everything else, and let's just say, Marla Bollak, welcome to the 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers. How are you?
Thank you, Jenny. I'm fine. I would like to first say I love serendipity. So I did cheat and looked at your thing. I saw the mosaic, and I'm currently reading The Body Keeps Score: Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk, MD. And I just, before I came on this call, finished a little mini chapter called The Mind is a Mosaic.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love that. I love when the mosaic is starting to go into different places, and the image is so rich and so alive. Someone sent me a cut of a video of their church group, and the minister was saying, we are pieces of a mosaic, we're scattered, and we just have to come together. And I mean, it was really beautiful. It's on the Mosaic community Facebook page. So let me ask you something. Go ahead.
Yes.
You go ahead. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say the mosaic in this context is it's that internally we're not just oneself. We have different consciousnesses. I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
And it's like a family or a mosaic where the different parts may or may not even know about each other, and some of them communicate, and it's, that's the metaphor.
Yeah, I love that. I have a spiritual teacher. His name is Yogananda, who is no longer
Ooh,
in the body, but he's talked about the cells in the body being like the citizens of our planet. And he said when you can unify the cells of the body, he didn't say the word mosaic, but it very
yeah.
much to me, when we can unify the mosaic of what's happening within our own selves, and we stand as one voice, finding whatever little connections we have with each other, or big connections, how beautiful it is. So I would be remiss if I paused any longer and said that one of the connections that we share is this connection of Pitzer College. Tell me about Pitzer. Tell me how you got there. Tell me why Pitzer.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm basically a poor girl from New Jersey, and in 1974 or so, when I was taking my SATs, at that time when you signed up for, there was a check box that said, check this box if you want to get catalogs from schools. And I got a catalog amongst others from Pitzer College, and I was like, this is where I want to go.
Wow.
Now, I didn't really think I would be able to go there. But I still did apply. It was $25 for me. It was a lot of money. And I from New Jersey, and I applied to all New Jersey state schools
Yeah.
and Pitzer,
Wow.
nothing else. And interestingly enough, I look back and at 17-year-old Marla and think like, what, how bizarre. But this is, I just think about this. I got accepted to the New Jersey colleges before I heard from Pitzer. And I actually accepted enrollment at Rutgers University
Wow.
before I heard from Pitzer, because I didn't believe I would be able to go.
Wow.
Even if I got in, I'm like getting a little bit it's
Yeah.
very emotional for me.
Yeah, I see it.
Because I really did want to go, but I can see just by my actions, I didn't believe it. And yet I enrolled, yet I applied. I put down my $25. The other schools were $5 to apply.
Wow.
And I got in. And as it turns out,
Pause
they
for a
gave,
minute. Pause for a
yeah,
minute. What, if you can remember, and I'm asking you because it feels real to you as you're speaking about it, I can
yeah,
feel the emotion. Um, for those who don't know Pitzer College, which would be probably the majority of everybody in the world, but for those who don't know Pitzer College, it's one of 5 colleges, which is part of a Claremont college.
hmm,
It is not inexpensive to go to.
no,
It has a fairly high price tag. One of the schools that it's associated with is Pomona, which is, they like to think they are the Harvard of the
of the West.
of the West, at least in
Yeah,
Southern California. Yes, they don't even know that Stanford exists. But there's also Harvey Mudd, which is an incredible engineering school.
yeah,
There was also, in that day, there was Claremont Men's College, which was a business school. There was also Scripps, which was a women's college. And Pitzer was sort of an arts and liberal college. And what's interesting to me is Marla went there and studied economics, from what our conversation
yeah.
was,
Well, it's
which
a social science.
social science. Okay, so there
Yeah,
you go.
yeah.
But in the days that I was there, economics would have been not why you would go to Pitzer. You would have gone somewhere.
I didn't. I originally thought I would do psychology.
Yes, that's why you went to Pitzer.
I don't know if that's why, because
No,
I
but
could
I'm
have
saying
studied.
that's what
Yeah,
psychology was, what Pitzer was known for,
yeah,
somewhat,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So
So
anthropology, sociology, yeah.
yeah. Did
Um,
you did you study with Lou Ellenhorn?
I did not study with him, but his son went to school with me, Ted.
Wow.
Um, and I just didn't, I mean, organizational studies, I just wasn't,
Yeah.
I didn't even know what that was. He was
Yeah.
very popular. He played the clarinet.
Yes. He was like a mentor to me.
Do you know he passed a few
I
years ago?
I found
Yeah.
that out only recently. He was like a mentor to me, and um, He was just starting organizational psychology when I was there. And he said, I'm getting old. You're a young guy. You're sharp. I like the way your mind thinks. I would like you to do this with me.
Wow.
And I had hair down to my waist. And I said,
Huh.
Lou, can you be, I mean, honestly, is there anything organizational in me that you can see at all? And he says, yes, I see a lot.
Wow.
And I just said, that's ridiculous. I can't do that. To his credit,
Hmm.
30 years later, I was in corporations talking to corporations about how to, about the psychology of their corporations, not knowing even and not even remembering that his insight was there.
That's funny. That's funny. And if it makes you feel any better or differently, his Ted had long hair too, not down
Okay.
to his waist, about as long as mine.
Yeah. Well, Lou was fine with my long hair. He didn't care.
Of course. Yeah.
Right? It was.
Spitzer.
Did you do anything with Ruth Monroe?
I did not.
Like,
I actually, so I went there originally think I would take psychology. I didn't take any psychology my freshman year. For whatever reason, my sophomore year, I took a couple psychology classes. One was with someone I think she taught at CMC. It
yeah.
was behavioral psych and maybe something else I don't remember. But for some reason, I took this class with Harvey Botwin. So I guess he wasn't there when he probably was there
He
because
may have been there, but it
I
was
didn't
so
get the sense
far
that he
from
was
my.
new.
It was so
Yeah.
far from my sense of understanding that.
And yeah, but Harvey I believe I became an econ major because of Harvey Botwin. He was
Wow.
such a good teacher, number one. And the other thing was I really like math and I'm very analytical. And so I thought economics and I still do is it's that combination of human behavior and analytical.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what brought me into, and I'm glad I did. I mean, in some sense, I mean, I look back and think, what could have been done. I have too many interests, but I wound up going down the economics, and I thought it would also be practical in the sense of just not that I would get a job in economics, which
Yeah.
I never did, but that it would just. I mean, look at what's happening now.
Totally.
I understand how things work economically, and I'm glad
Yeah.
for.
I think it's what a fabulous thing to major in, and I think it gives you a basis of understanding of the
Yeah.
way the world works, which is psychology. What's that do? It's really, okay, great. Um, so, um, let me ask you. Let's backtrack a little. Now we have
Sure.
Pitzer a little bit, as the umbrella of us.
By the way, I really would like to say Pitzer saved my life. And I don't mean that literally. But had I gone to Rutgers, which was very close to my, and commuted, I don't think I would have made it.
Wow. You don't think you would have made it? How?
My home life was terrible. And if it continued to be terrible, I don't think I would. I think I would have dropped out of college at a minimum.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have killed myself or anything like that, but
Right.
I needed to be out of that situation. And Pitzer, in part, was a way out. And then Pitzer is besides being a fabulous education,
Yeah.
it's such a nurturing place. And in fact, I was not even able to take in all the nurturing
Yeah. Well,
at the time.
tell me what that means, because I think there are a lot of people sitting here listening that might relate to that statement. Tell me
That I
what that
couldn't
means.
take in the nurturing.
Yeah. What does that mean that you couldn't take in the nurturing?
I I could give you an intellectual answer, but I'm trying to go with the feeling of it, and it's
Yeah.
just it was so alien to me.
Wow.
I think it was just I didn't grow up being nurtured, and I didn't recognize it as nurturing. It was so alien. In fact, I wanted to transfer out of Pitzer for my freshman year, and Harvey talked me out of it
Wow.
happily. because I was so uncomfortable around. I mean, first of all, it was mostly rich kids.
Yeah.
I was, and so there was that culture. And I was from New Jersey. Half of the students at Pitzer, at least at that time, were from California. The rest were from around the world, and I was not your typical student. I just wasn't. I was almost on a full. It cost me less to go to Pitzer, including airfare and all that, than to go to Rutgers.
Yeah.
Okay, to commute to Rutgers, and so I was just so out of my element, and I think, and so that's the feeling of it. I was, I had a little chip on my shoulder from growing up in a hostile environment, and so here's more of the intellectual, but I can feel that too, is that when you grow up in an abusive household and you're traumatized, and this is not just me, but typically, and it is how I was, very defensive, and I would even say aggressive in my defending of myself. And so when you're defensive like that, you're staving off the things that can hurt you, but you're also staving off the things that can help you. And so that was, sadly, I mean, I did let a lot of it in, but there could have been so much more.
I want people who are listening to know that Marla and I have never had a conversation before. And within the first 5 minutes or so of our conversation, can you feel how real this person is? And can you feel how vulnerable and open she is in just having this discussion in this room here? And I want you to ask yourself, I want you to become part of the conversation with us. I want you to ask yourself, how open are you to being nurtured? How much do you allow the goodness of this world to come into you? Or do you do what Marla said she did at that point in time, which she wouldn't be here on this conversation if that was still totally her reality, because she would be defensive to come into a room from someone she doesn't know. So I want to also sort of say I see something in her that is not the words of who she was when she was a 17-year-old kid, obviously. But how many of us are still doing the same thing? I can tell you personally, I've had so much trauma and hurt in my life, not from an abusive situation, but from losing people that I love, that even with my wife, who I love more than anything in the whole world, I do the same thing. I hold back a little bit, because I believe that if people come too close to me, they'll get hurt somehow. Not because I'll hurt them, but something bad will happen to them. Because everybody that came close to me got hurt and something happened to them. And so, that fortunately I'm free enough to speak about it and talk about it and work on it and try. But I know there's a big pain my wife feels still, even though we talk about it, because she wants to come in.
Yeah.
And I still hold some space there, because I don't want her to get hurt. Not because I'll hurt her, but I'm hurting her by holding her back. So it's one of those weird things. So I want to just share with you how much I feel what you're saying, not only hear what you're saying.
And Danny, as I'm studying more about trauma, and I'm a coach and I do relationships, but it always gets down to trauma. And so I'm really digging deep into it.
Yes.
Trauma affects people so deeply, and so many people, and it doesn't have to be trauma with a giant T.
Yeah.
Right. But it affects your brain, it affects your nervous system, it affects, just starting from there, it's real effects that are measurable and have been measured. And people just get over it, and like, what's wrong with you? It happened so long ago. You talk about me being different from my 17-year-old self. I've done a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah.
Even prior to 17, I started really early, and didn't have the tools we have today. But I would just like to say that, your trauma and the way you hold back, and my trauma, the way I hold back is that's how we're built. We need to protect ourselves from the hurt. And it often either has bad side effects to people around us and even to ourselves.
To ourselves, I agree. And I would like to question what you just said, not because I
Sure.
want to challenge it or fight you.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's how we're built. I believe that's how we built ourselves. I believe that we're built really to embrace a world and feel a part of a world that we come in wide open and vulnerable and receiving. And yet we watch through our lives those people that we trust the most and count on the most either abuse us or leave us or something happens or hurt us or and it's the hurts that we take on and and then the meaning we give to those things that paint the box that we live in.
Absolutely. So I totally agree with you. So when I say that's how we're built, there's this nature versus nurture. We are built to, we respond to things that happen to us, right? So we come in with a certain amount of openness and love, and and when we're pushed away, that affects us, and it again affects our physiology. That's what I mean, is we respond to things. And you're absolutely right. Trauma is not about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to it, and how you're supported in it or not. So somebody who's in let's say a very nurturing family, and something bad happens, uh, a sibling dies or
Yeah,
something, but your family holds you and helps you through that. I mean, that's a terrible thing.
yeah,
It's a traumatic thing. But now contrast, and so you're going to respond to it how you're going to respond. Contrast that with someone who's in a very unsupportive family and a sibling dies, and maybe you get blamed for it.
yeah.
I
Or
mean, I
maybe
was
you.
blamed for one of my mother's miscarriages. I mean,
No,
this is but that had an effect.
totally.
And we're built to respond to things, and we're built to protect ourselves from hurt.
Yeah,
That's what I mean by what we're built to do.
I
So
get it.
you can come open. So those, I don't think those are,
Exclusive. No.
not at all.
And for those of you who are listening, I just want to say I'm suddenly transported back to my days at Pitzer College, sitting on knolls in the grass, having conversations just like this. And it was something beautiful. Pitzer, I just want to
Yeah.
say before we get off of Pitzer, um, so the story of the Mosaic is my story. I lost my parents 2 years apart on the same day,
Mm.
and when um, an aunt and uncle that I really didn't know who lived in a different part. I lived in Philly, and they lived in the Midwest. Took me in. It was my mother's sister who took me in.
How old were you?
I was 15, 13 when my dad passed away, and 15 when my mom passed away.
Wow, I didn't realize when you said that you were,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So at 15, at 13, my life changed because my dad was my hero.
Mm.
At 15, my life got decimated, and so I now moved in with strangers, people that I didn't really know,
In a different
in a different
culture.
place, and also we were in a lower middle class family. My father spent all his money trying to give us what we wanted, and
Mm.
died with 2 suits and a mountain full of debt.
Mm.
And my uncle was a household name. So I moved from a lower middle class family to a family that was world renowned.
Wow.
And um, so I applied to 2 schools because they told me you can't apply. There's only one thing. We'll pay for your college. You just cannot go to an experimental school because I wanted to go to an experimental school.
Oberlin.
I just wanted to go somewhere. I didn't know where I was. I can't remember.
Oh,
But they said you can't go to an experimental school. But Pitzer was an experimental school when I went there.
it
But
was just like 10, it was founded in 63.
yes,
It's astounding.
so when I went there, when I applied there, they said, well, you can go to Pitzer because it's part of the Claremont colleges because it
Ah.
has a great reputation being a part of this 5-school conglomerate and a
Yeah.
beautiful campus. And
Yeah.
The other school I applied to was Tulane. I got into both of the schools, um, and my aunt and uncle wanted me to go to Tulane because they wanted me to be in New Orleans and party and have all of the New Orleans because I was super smart. And they wanted me to just have fun, and they wanted to sort of, I
Oh.
think with the pain of losing my parents, they wanted me just to be someplace where I could be in a great school, in a fun place, and just have a good time. So had I gone to Tulane, my life would have been entirely different, I think, than it is now. You
How
know, but
so?
when I went to Pitzer, I took advantage of all the experimentality of that school.
Mm.
I created my courses. I went into a mental institution, and I did a groups. I participated with their group circle, and
Wow.
I saw how the people that were running the group circle and the people in the group circle basically had the same characteristics. And I noticed that in any group that exists, the certain characteristics were present, whether that's a business or an insane asylum.
Hmm.
The same personalities made up a group, and the same functionality made up a group. I went into I went into element into jun- primary school, first, second, third, fourth grade,
Hmm.
and I hooked people up to biofeedback because they were having. I wanted to help them realize that they had a hard time testing, and if they could mentally change their their comfort level in a moment, biofeedback would get people to go to to find a relaxed state, and it would make sounds when they were in a relaxed state. So I took that to schools and worked with the educational system of Claremont and Pomona, and I created that my own courses to do that. I built a pyramid at Pitzer because I believed that the energy under a pyramid was different than the energy outside of a pyramid, and I wanted to see what would happen if we learned under a pyramid, how that would change the way we would learn, if our buildings were shaped in pyramids rather than in blocks. I worked
Wow.
I worked with Ruth Monroe in archaeology, and the
Hmm.
women's movement was really starting up strong then. And it was Pitzer was, I was in the first class of men that came to Pitzer, so
Ah,
there was already a little like
right.
we were 50 guys in a 700, and so it was like heaven for us.
Right.
Um, but I walked into this room where they were all active feminists, and I was the only guy in the room. And Ruth and I were doing a research on whether it was possible for males to lactate. And we had found a tribe in Africa where the women went out and worked, and the males stayed at home, and they breastfed their children. The males were actually capable
Really?
of lactating. So we were applying for grants to go to Africa and do that together. We got denied for whatever reason, but she and I were trying to move that along. So Pitzer for me was the exploration of everything that was interesting to me, that I
It
would
was a great
never
place.
have.
So I have to ask you, what dorm were you in?
I think I was. What were the two? There was Stanford, and what was the other one?
Sanford, Holden, and Mead.
I think I was in Holden. I mean, Holden was across the way from Stanford. I don't. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
I was
yeah,
in
yeah. It
Holden.
had the yellow. Well, when I
Yeah,
was there, there's a yellow brick road.
I think I was at Holden.
I
Um,
was in Holden
yeah,
the first 2 years. Yeah,
yeah.
three years.
And then I was in there the first year, and then I moved off campus, and we were in a house with some people, and
Cool.
we were growing marijuana and doing all sorts. I mean, it was crazy.
It was a
We
great. It's. I can't say no. It's such a great place.
I was doing work on marijuana because we were growing it in our backyard, and we were
Mm.
obviously doing a lot of it. And then a policeman moved in next door to us,
No.
and so we went over and brought him pie and stuff like that because we were just crazy. And and we had a swimming pool, and he said, "How come you don't ever invite me over to the swimming pool?" And
Ah.
I said to him, "If I would love to have you at our swimming pool, but you have to promise when you come onto our property you don't see anything." And he said, "Why, are you doing something?" I said, "I can't answer you that. You know that. I can't say anything to you." He said, "Well, I'll come onto your property and not see anything." So I said, "If you can not be a policeman, You and your family are welcome anytime you want to come over and use our pool. And so this policeman who was very against drugs came to our pool and was swimming with us and started smoking marijuana with us it was crazy times. But this was,
It was crazy
this was
times.
1970, for God's sake. What did we expect? So I dropped out of Pitzer because I had done all my undergraduate courses in 2 years. And I realized the rest of it was going to be just filler classes.
But didn't they let you grad? Yes, you didn't have enough credits.
I didn't have enough credits.
Yeah.
And I just said, I don't want to stay here any longer. So I put my thumb out and I hitchhiked around the world. And so
Wow.
that was, it was crazy. But I loved it. Had I gone to Tulane, I doubt I would have had any of those experiences.
I don't know much about Tulane, but Pitzer's pretty special.
It's really special.
It's pretty special. I went a more traditional, went through and did the 4 years. I would have liked to be more adventurous, but I think that, financially it was difficult. And
Yeah.
I know some people go anyway, and I'm fairly intrepid, but I just, couldn't get myself to do it. I was too worried about the money.
Well, and why wouldn't you be? But you had a full scholarship, which was almost a full scholarship,
Yeah.
which is
And I had to
amazing.
pay for the rest. I didn't have support from my family, so
Yeah.
I had a lot of responsibility pretty early.
So, Marla, what's important to you?
Oh boy. So many. I mean, I guess a lot of things. I think that for me, freedom is important, and I know that's like a, apple pie kind of word, but I do think it's important that we should that it's important. I like to be able to do what you want to do, and we all have constraints. I mean, I just talked about one. I mean, I felt I wanted to be free to go and travel the world, but I wasn't. I was constrained,
Yeah,
reality or not, because like I said, some people travel with no money.
yeah. I did, by the way. I hitchhiked with, I think I had $400 in my pocket when I left for a year-long trip that turned into a 5-year trip around the world.
Yeah, well, you had started out with more money than I did, but not a lot more. I had a few
Yeah,
hundred,
yeah,
but it was just, I didn't have the resources. I didn't know. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
whatever those, money being one of them, but just whatever.
So,
But uh-huh.
go ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think that, in these days, I think that political activism is important. I think that, um, all the issues that have surfaced recently, there's so many important ones
Yeah.
that, education is important, understanding other people, reaching out to other people. I mean, love, peace and love is important.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard to really say.
Do you think freedom, because the life that I know that you've told me about, which is
Hmm.
only the life that you've told me about, I don't really know much more about
Right.
you, right? Um, but growing up in that environment that you grew up in, it's hard to feel free because you never know when the next smack is going to come. Whether that's physical or mental or sexual or whatever it is. Abuse is abuse, and
Yeah.
you're walking on eggshells all the time. So it's hard to be free when you're walking on the eggshells of not knowing when you're going to be attacked again. Do you think
True.
that's why freedom is so important to you?
Um, maybe because when I was growing up, my goal was to be free was to be independent and free. And again, talk about synchronicity. My birthday is July 4th.
Wow.
And so that was really, I wanted I wanted to get an education, and I wanted to get out, and I wanted to be on my own because I thought that would solve, you
Everything.
know, and to some extent it did, right? I mean, as I mentioned before, had I not gotten out, I don't know. I mean, you talk about going to Tulane or Pitzer, how your life would have been different. My life would have been very different had I not gone to Pitzer as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
And part of that was just getting away, and part of it, again, it's a special place. But yeah, I do. I do think that's why it is, because all I wanted was to get out and
Yeah.
be on my own and be independent and run my own life the way I wanted to run it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So, what makes you happy now?
Nothing. What makes me happy?
Hold it, but I love the juxtaposition of that. You went nothing and then you laughed. This happy laugh. So, so it's just interesting to mosaic those pieces together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What about that answer? Nothing made you happy in that moment.
Well, when people talk about happy, it's, again, it's another like word like freedom and happy, and you know what I mean? It's like, what does that really mean? And things do make me happy. So I just was
Right.
making a joke when I
Right.
said
Totally.
nothing. But I do think in these times I am very, again, going back to, I'm very worried and stressed, and it's hard to feel happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I like, a good comedy. I like talking to people. I mean, what happy and makes me, what makes me, I think about what makes me laugh, and that would be jokes and funny things. But happy, I'm not really sure what that means. It's an emotion where you feel happy in that moment. Um,
Has that always been true for you, or is it more recently that that's the?
it's not something I give a lot of thought to, I guess. I don't, my goal, right? So when I think of people say, oh, I want to be happy, you just want to be happy. That's mine is I want peace.
Piece?
I want peace. I want to feel at peace. And happy is a passing thing, and you can feel at peace and be happy. You can be contemplative. I mean, reading a book is, am I happy when I'm reading a good book? I wouldn't use that word. I
Gotcha.
would say I feel good. I
Okay.
feel at peace. I'm learning something, or maybe it's making me, something about the ideas riling me up. It's engaging me. So, um, when I think happy, I think laughing, and then
Yeah.
being at a party or something like that would be what makes me happy. And these days, there's not a lot of partying going on.
Yeah. Totally. When you get stressed out,
Mhm.
being that peace is important to you, what do you do to bring yourself to peace?
Well, it's interesting because that goes back to the my studying of the trauma, and so deep breathing. I'm really learning techniques. It's a lot. When I feel stressed, sometimes I just let feel it. There's a lot of techniques like breathing and havening, but the thing that I like the best
Yeah.
when I can do it is, and I don't live right there. I can drive to it right now. There used to be this place where I could walk, and it was a small botanical gardens. I'm here in Asheville, North Carolina, and I always wondered why they called it botanical gardens, because it really isn't gardens,
Right.
but it's a little bit of wildlife. So I would walk around and then come to this place. A stream ran through it, and I would go down, and there were really big rocks. And when I say big, I mean I could lay down on the rock.
Yeah.
Three people could, and I would lay down on the rock, and there was a canopy of trees above, the stream going by, laying down the rock, and let the rock absorb everything, and then hear the sound of the water as it washed it away.
Beautiful.
And that worked like a charm.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you do
Um,
that in your mind, or do you need to be at that place? Can you sort of visualize that place and let it do it for you, even if you can't get there?
that's a good idea. I have had trouble with visualizing.
Hmm.
And I think that, again, I'm thinking about this stuff a lot. I
Yeah.
think, and I don't know if it's me, I like to do surveys and ask people. I have trouble visualizing positive things.
Huh.
And so when I go and try and visualize something, I get nothing if I try to do, or I, my mind just goes to what's going to go wrong. But I will try that because I have stuff like an earthing
Yeah.
mat, and I go outside and sit down, and I actually, because I've been working on it, I haven't had these like super stress so much, but that's a good idea.
Yeah, because it's not even something you have to visualize. It's something you just have to remember.
Right,
Like
right, right.
visualization and memory is different for me.
Exactly. It is different. So that's why I think I could do it.
Yeah, I bet you could.
It's a good
Because
idea.
because even when you spoke about it, I could feel the peace in you in that moment as you spoke about it. It's
Oh,
interesting.
cool.
Yeah, so I
It's
think it
just a
would.
beautiful little place.
Yeah, you can feel it. Um, if money weren't important, what would you do?
I would do three things. Well, I'll be like the Monty Python skit. I would do four things. I would. I love coaching. And just learning, and all this stuff is learning about myself and helping other people. I read tarot cards. I just love it. I would. I mean, I did it for years without getting paid. And the third thing is I would make pottery.
Wow.
And so that's what I would like do. But I would also want to travel and,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Did you make pottery at Pitzer?
It's funny. David Furman there when
Yes. Yes.
all roads lead back to Pitzer. I was thinking about it myself because I did not. Funny story, because David Furman, I don't know if you know this, is very well known in the pottery world,
No.
in ceramics. And I didn't know that either till later on. And I didn't much like him, but I would always look at ceramics, and I really was attracted to it, but I felt that here I was getting this expensive education. I needed to focus on academics.
To be serious.
Yeah. And I can take pottery later on,
Yeah.
which I did. And I started out in the basement of someone in the next town over. And she actually introduced me to someone who big in the pottery world, who has since passed, Jerry Williams, who ran the Studio Potter, which is a big magazine. And so I've gotten to, and I've met a lot of luminaries and very interesting people, and I love it. And so I did do the pottery later on, and
Yeah.
the classes were a lot cheaper.
Yeah. No, I'm Pat. I'm 100% sure. So imagine a 16-year-old kid, because I went to Pitzer at 16.
Hmm.
Imagine a 16-year-old kid coming from Philadelphia,
Hmm.
living in the Midwest for a couple of years, coming into California,
Wow.
coming into a small school with 650 women and 50 guys,
Hmm.
um, and pottery wheels as one of the big things that people were doing there. I just fell in love. It was,
Did you take a pottery class there,
I,
or
I,
any?
I never took a class, but I sat with, I had a weird, something weird about me is I'm extremely friendly to people, um, coming out of the gate. I'm the first person to walk up to someone and say, "Hey, how are you?" And we would
Hmm.
pass by people, and so I was walking, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on? How's it?" And about a week or two later, this woman came up to me and she said, "I'm really mad at you." And I said, "I'm sorry, why? Like, what did I do?" She said, "Well, you've been saying, 'Hi, how are you? What's going on?' for 2 weeks now. Like, I've been trying to give you signals that I just want to have a real conversation with you. And you
Wow.
just go happy-go-lucky on your way. Hi, how are you going on?" And I said, "Well, that's just who I am. I'm not that interested right now in having conversations with everybody that I say hi to." And she said,
Right.
but that pisses me off. And it really like taught me something. But so then I sat with her and I said, so why don't we do something together instead of just arguing with each other? And she said, well, I do pottery in here, and why don't we go and sit and do some pottery together? And so I sat with her,
Oh.
not in course, but she was just making pots together with her,
No,
which
I
was
wish I knew.
super
'Cause
fun.
it's funny that you say that because when I first got to Pitzer, people would say, "Hi, how are you?" And I would start to tell them, and they're like
Yeah,
gone, and I'm like, "What is with these people? They
that's
don't
okay.
really give a shit about how
That's
you."
right.
Oh, they don't
No,
really.
you're okay. You can say give a
They
shit. That's all right.
okay. They don't like. Why are they asking me how am I if they don't really want to hear the answer?
Yeah, yeah. And I did want to hear it, but I wanted to hear it from the people that really intrigued me. But I was kind enough to say hi to everybody, but I realized that wasn't really kind. That was just my own, sort of interesting way of walking through the world.
Oh, well, for me, it wasn't the high part. It's the how are you?
Yeah,
And
that's nice.
I mean, I got over it. It was like I
Yeah,
didn't take me long to figure out this is just,
yeah.
the colloquial way of saying hello. But
But
it
you're
did
a
confuse me at
Jersey,
first.
you're a Jersey girl. I'm a
That's
Philly
right.
guy in a California environment where it's sort of, like different cultures coming together. So,
I would venture to guess that young woman, was not from California. I don't know.
no, I'm sure she wasn't from California. Um, let's go into something that I call lightning round. We've already talked a lot, but I'm not really good at lightning rounds, but I still it just gives an idea of.
Okay.
First one is
I don't
wonder.
think I am either. I'm not a
Okay,
fast thinker.
it's all right. So we don't have to go fast. I think I already know the answer because I've seen one creeping around in your screen there. Are you a dog or a cat person?
I'm both.
Both. Okay.
Cats are easier, but they're just, and cats can be very much like dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a friend who had a cat that would retrieve little silver paper balls that they would make, and I couldn't believe it. So it's the first time I saw a cat like a dog. Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee.
Okay.
This is easy.
See, it's going to get. These are the easy ones.
Oh,
Junk food or organic?
oh, organic.
Yeah. Conservative or liberal?
Pitzer. I guess there were some conservatives. They were liberal.
Yeah. Uh, um, do you think you're an in the box person or an out of the box person?
I think I'm both. I mean, I think I know I'm different than other people, and I can't put my finger on it. But people have told me, and I realize I respond to things a little bit differently. Um, I'm very creative, so I guess that's usually what people mean when they say in or out.
Yeah.
I would say mostly out,
Yeah. Cool.
but I'm not like way out.
Right.
I guess I don't know.
Right. Both of these are both of these are super important, and so and it would be easy to answer both.
Okay.
I want you to answer one, if you can, one or the other. If you can, and if you can't, just say both. This is your moment.
Okay.
Is it more important for you in this period of time to be able to stand up and have your voice heard, or is it more important for you to be one of the people that listens to other people's voices?
Ooh. I think they're both important for different reasons.
Yeah.
It's very important because if people don't think it's important for their voice to be heard, I mean, I think it's important for my voice to be heard and other people's voices to be heard.
So, which is
And
more important for you right now?
right now,
Yeah, like which phase of your life are you in? Do you have a message that you are trying to get out to the world? When we first started talking, you said I don't have an agenda, but I don't know if you. I think everybody has something they want to say to the world.
I meant for this,
Yeah,
yeah, this content. I do have something, and it's about, I would say, helping the downtrodden. And I mean, I brought this up a few times. So that's the thing that is um, the trauma. So there's childhood trauma, there's racial trauma, it's healing. I
yeah,
think I'm about healing and helping other people to heal. healing myself and helping other, because I don't, healers don't heal, they create a space for other people
Yeah.
in which they heal themselves. And that's a conversation. So when you say, is there to me, it's a conversation. It's not just, hey, this is my message, and jam it down people's throats,
Right.
but it's a start of a conversation. And that's actually one of the reasons I was attracted to your show. It's like, it's conversation.
Yeah.
And that's when magic happens. It's one of the times, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm kind of talking out of my asshole half the time, like right now. But as I do, thoughts come up, and it's kind of opening up and letting come through. And then I like to hear what people have to say. But yeah, I'm here to say trauma is a real thing. It affects people in a real way. And here are ways you can address trauma
Love it.
and heal. That's where I am in this moment.
Yeah.
And, it's empowering people. And even when I do tarot card readings, when people come to me, a lot of people come, they want to hear, they want to feel better. That's why people come to readers. They want to feel better. They want to hear something good. And some people come because they want to be told. They want you to tell them, help them make a decision by telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And I won't do that. I'm about empowering them and giving them the information and guidance, if you will, to make their own decisions.
Love it. Love it.
So it's empowerment.
So if someone is listening now,
Mm-hmm.
and here's what Marla is saying, don't be a stranger. Contact her. If you're dealing with something that has been traumatic for you and you don't have an idea of how to move to the next step, contact her. If you want something that'll make you feel good, invite her to do a tarot reading for you. This is what happens in this room. I'm not the only one meeting a stranger. All of us that listen are meeting strangers. And stranger things have happened than coming into a room where two strangers are speaking and listening to it and feeling like the person that's speaking is your friend. So if you feel drawn to what Marla's doing, I invite you and encourage you to just don't let it stop there. Make contact, and I'm gonna ask her for your contact information in a moment, and we'll put it in the show notes and all that too, so that people have a real way to do that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Have you always felt like you fit into the world, or have you always felt a little different?
Oh, I've always felt a little different. And I think that, it goes beyond that. There's been a yearning to make connection and find my tribe. And and I think part of that also, maybe under the covers, is, yearning for a loving, nurturing place. Again, Pitzer, maybe that's part of the appeal for me. It was such an accepting place.
Yeah. I'm going to
Rare.
lob something over the net to you, just because
Okay.
I feel you.
Mm-hmm.
What's happened for me in this room full of strangers
Mm-hmm.
is I'm starting to make real friendships with people, and I'm starting to feel how people who one of the data points that I'm accruing here
Mm-hmm.
is that in 2 points that are really interesting to me. I created this room so that people would have a place to speak their voice. And when I ask what's more important to people, to speak their voice or to listen, a large majority of the people say it's important to listen to people. They want to speak their voice too, but they really want to be able to hear what other people say. They don't want to just speak their voice into a vacuum, or speak their voice to a world, because it's sort of what you said, the conversation's interesting. The other interesting data point is that people feel really different, and they've never felt like they fit in. And that is interesting to me, because we spend so much time trying to force people to fit into realities, even those of us who feel different. try and box people into Democrat or Republican, woman or male, economically good, economically not good, what religion do you practice, what side of the border, and we try and characterize even some of my questions that I ask could have the potential to sort of box people into a place.
Mhm.
And we feel comfortable when people fit into boxes. And I wonder if you have any insight as to why people who feel different want so hard to make people fit into boxes. Do you
I'm
even
sorry,
believe?
why people who feel so different want to make people fit into boxes?
It seems like so many of us, and maybe it's just the population that's responding to me, feel like
Yeah,
they've never fit in. And yet
you
I
know,
watch people try and make people fit into different categories or join
uh-huh.
groups of like-minded people where other people don't fit in. And
Okay,
I
I'm not sure I understand the premise or agree with it, but I'll just tell you I'll
yeah,
give you my response. Um, I, because when I say I don't, find people, it's not that I want to fit in. I like to relate, and you always find a place to relate. But what was going through my mind as you were just talking was, so depending upon my role, depending upon how I'm dressed, I've noticed how people respond to me differently, and I'll give you a few examples. One is, I had just gotten out of college and landed in Boston, and I was walking around in a store in sweatpants or something. I don't know, something very casual. And I don't even remember the store. It was on Boylston Street or something. Boston is very, um, uh, was very preppy for I can't think of a better term
yeah,
right now. So anyway, I walked in, none of the salespeople even looked at me. About a week later, I walked in, I had a suit on because I was coming from an interview, and everybody wanted to, like, oh, can I help you, can I help you,
yeah,
can I help you? That's one example. And of course, we know about people of color are treated differently too, but it's also how you're dressed, and not to they're not very comparable, but I don't think people were looking at me for shoplifting, but maybe they were, I don't know. But here's another thing. I've had a lot of different roles in my life, and I don't tend to take on that role as an identity.
yeah,
For instance, I've been but I've noticed how people treat me differently. So when I was a software engineer, oh, you're so smart, you're a software engineer, and but when I was, when I come, people know me as a potter. Oh, you're so creative, you're a potter.
right,
Tarot card reader. Oh, you're psychic, or like, that could be good or bad, right? Or you're
right,
doing the devil's work. People are just they've got stereotypes. I mean, and I'm,
yeah,
I'm
totally,
not saying I don't do that to other people. My experience has been, as I walk in to these, with these different roles on, I think of them as, I mean, they're roles. You can think of them as clothes. I mean, even my first example was about what clothes I was wearing.
yeah,
It's just, and I do, and as I'm thinking about it more, I think for me, it's really been looking for, it's just, but there's a sense of belonging, that I don't have, um, or haven't had. Now, I mean, I have friends, they may be dispersed in different places,
yeah,
but, and they're not like me in every respect, but there's a point, there's an energetic connection,
yeah.
and there's
S-
also a like-mindedness. And I was on Facebook a lot, and someone was lamenting they lost friends because Trump, right?
Right,
And I just said, as it turns out, all of my really good friends are like-minded, so I have not had that problem
yeah,
of like, oh, I can't talk to my friends.
yeah.
So I don't know, does that answer the question? I don't know.
Yeah, sort of. What it really, like, what I've been interested in is how many of us feel that we don't fit in.
Yeah.
My initial thought coming into that would have been that that wasn't true, that the large
Oh,
majority of people feel like they fit into the world. But what I'm seeing when they come into this room, and again, it could be just the population of people that respond to me, or that I have the algorithm with to speak to, are
right.
telling me they feel different. And yet, and so one of the things that I'm trying to create now, what I realize through is happening through this room, is to hold the space for those people who feel different, to create the space for others who feel different, to just be able to walk into a room and feel okay with whoever or whatever they are, and to create multiple rooms of conversations where people can start to speak with each other, can start to listen, can start to be heard, can start to feel that someone is actually cares enough about them to take the time to listen to them. I know the story of how you're dressed, and it makes you feel good because I work with corporations and innovation.
Oh.
Back to Lou Ellenhorn, just my buddy. and I walk into three-piece suit land in a t-shirt and jeans. And I remember one time walking in on the East Coast to a very well-respected boardroom. And I came in a t-shirt and jeans, and people in the room looked up from the busy work that they were doing because they were waiting for me to come, but they didn't know it was me.
Right.
And they said, excuse me, we're about to have a meeting here. I said, really? I said, really, what's the meeting going to be on? And they said, well, it's really not, we don't really have time to talk to you about what the meeting's going to be on. They said, are you coming to clean it up or take the trash, or what are you doing? I said, yeah, I guess you could say that's what I'm doing. I guess you could say that's exactly what I'm doing. And I said, what time's your meeting start? They said, well, we're waiting for the person to come now. He seems like he's a little late. I said, what if he's not late? What if he's here right in front of you right now? And they said, no, you're the one leading the meeting? I said, yeah, this is a meeting on innovation. We're talking about innovation. How do you think you're doing so far? Did you expect someone to come in and look just like you and work with you on how to see things differently?
I love it.
And it was one of the best sessions that we had together because they were totally caught by surprise. They realized what they had done. They saw what was happening. And the truth of the matter is they were right. I was coming to take away their trash. And so that was a beautiful moment for them where I said, you guys got a lot of trash, so you had me pegged perfectly.
Good for you.
But one of the things I'll do with you under separate cover, we can have another conversation, is see if you have any interest in being a part of creating the world that you want to see. Because people who are different, trying to find the place where they fit in, it's sort of an oxymoron.
Right.
Right? Because they feel different, and they're going to always feel different. And so...
And it's okay.
And it's not only okay, it's beautiful. If you think about the image of a mosaic, what makes it beautiful is the fact that they're different colors, different sizes, different textures, different shapes, different dimensions, all sorts of different things. That's what makes the mosaic beautiful. In the world we live in, different doesn't make the world beautiful.
No.
We spoke about the tragedies or the calamities that are going on in the world right now. We talked about the Me Too movement, if you look at it. We talk about Black Lives Matter. We talk about this pandemic that's isolating and holding us all in isolation to a great extent. Do you think the world's trying to say something to us?
I think that, you back to this idea of the mosaic, is we have all of these different consciousnesses in our country, in the world. I'll just talk more about our country because that's what I'm more familiar with. Yeah. I do think that things are surfacing, and really bad things, and that we may have been somewhat aware of, and by we, I mean, many of us. I just watched Ava DuVernay's 13th last night. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
It's about basically how we have historically and continue to enslave and talk about traumatized. This was about Black people, but also Native Americans, really poor, so many groups. And I think that the first, and it needs to be healed, right? The first thing for healing is awareness. Yeah. And I think as these things are coming, and I consider myself to be fairly well informed. Before 2015, I was not very political. I kind of followed it, but not like I do now.
Yeah.
Um, but social issues, and as you can imagine, Pitzer is very into social issues. Angela Davis taught there when
Yeah.
I was there, probably when you were there. Um, but still, that was an eye-opening movie for me. And I think that as the awareness, then it's what do you do with it?
Yeah.
Do you push it back down? Do you deny it?
Yeah.
Or do you let it come up, experience that pain, and do something about it? And you could talk. We're talking about Black people reparations, whatever. I mean, I think those conversations need to be had,
Yeah.
and so there's that one thing. The other is the level of corruption,
Yeah.
and we're at a crisis point. And then the pandemic. I don't know that the pandemic, the virus itself, is trying to tell us something, but it's our handling of it shows us again breaks in the fabric,
Yeah.
tears in the fabric. And I think that it's a moment of truth. Is this the end of the American experiment, the fall of the American empire, however you want to characterize it?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So I do think so. The simple answer is yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I do.
Do you think it's trying to tell you something personally?
Um, Boy, in I think that everything that happens in our life happens, I pay attention.
Yeah.
And, for me, I don't know if it's trying to tell me something. It's something that's happening. And what meaning do I pull from that? And the meaning I pull from that is it's about issues of control. And again, freedom, right? And the the things that I'm learning that are so sad and tragic. Again, 13th, that movie. It's, by the way, I'll just say Netflix has made it available on YouTube for free.
Yeah.
Anybody can go find it and watch it. And I think it's an important movie. The way, and in a sense, I've been complicit just because, I mean, my family came over to the I'm a second generation, my family, most of them burned in the ovens. And, and I, in some sense don't feel responsible, but in my complicity in just not being active enough, not paying attention enough, being my own ignorance. I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And I am active in politics now. I mean, to the extent I can. I don't think you need to be, I would like to be, but there's things. I think for me though, it's about freedom and control, and it's the oppression. I feel that oppression and of corrupt people, and this is not the worst oppression people have suffered
Yeah.
under. Even if Trump gets another 4 years and goes crazy and the Republican, whatever. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that because who knows, but I think about Stalin, I think about Pol Pot, I think about Hitler, I think about I'm blanking on some of these other names, but
Yeah.
you get the idea.
Totally.
It's just the human condition, and I'm a human. So I think that when I look, it's not that it's speaking to me in the sense of like, oh, Marla, it's speaking to all of us. And how do we make sense of it? How do we think about it? And also, I do try to understand the more than 1/3 of our country who supports this person.
Yeah.
And is happy, many of whom are very happy for some of them are grudgingly, and I try to understand what drives them,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to change their mind. I've learned that.
Yeah. I want to thank you for all your time and for all you've said. Uh, And I want to wrap up now, and I just want to ask you, if you had one thing that you could say to this world and the people in it right now, that would be, you've said a lot already, and
Yeah.
they'll get a lot of wisdom from it. But if you had one thing that they could start doing right now that might change the momentum of their life, what would you say to them?
Only one thing I'll just say what comes to mind, and that's please be kind to yourself and others,
Hmm.
and refrain from judgment. And I would actually modify that a little bit because just notice when you're judging yourself or others and be
Yeah,
kind.
beautiful. If people want to get in touch with you, and I know you're going to send me your social media links to put in here, your website, all
Oh, okay.
whatever you have, please do that.
Hmm.
But just one mention of that, because we'll put them all in here. How would be the best way for people to get in touch with you?
I think I have my website, and I am updating this today. MarlaBollak.com is not fully fleshed out, but I'm using that first page kind of as a clearinghouse to point to, Facebook and my podcast and,
Perfect.
my tarot, different things. So that's MarlaBollak.com.
And we'll have the spelling of that all correctly in the show notes, so you
Yeah.
can go there and see it. Again, thank you. Go ahead. Did you want to say something else?
I just wanted to thank you. This has been, really a great conversation. And beyond that, thank you for having me and platform and, saying, hey, go talk to Marla. The work, and I'm going to go see more about the work you do, but it's just thank you
It's my
for all
absolute.
that you do
Thank you
that I
for
don't even know about, but thank you.
th-
It's
thank you for taking the time to even say that. It touches me that you would say that. And thank you for being here with us. It's beautiful to meet you. It's beautiful to get to know you in this way.
likewise.
For those of you who are listening, I'm an old man by now, and I've realized that there's certain things that just happen over the course of life. There's certain ways that people get to know things about people. And it's really, really very simple. If you see something that you like, share it with people you like. So if you've listened to this conversation or any of the conversations we've had and you've liked them, be kind enough to share it with people that like you and you're friends with, so that they have the opportunity to see something that you like and share it with some of their friends too if they like. If you don't want to do it, don't do it because I'm asking you to do it. But if you do, that's the way a movement spreads. That's the way a revolution happens. That's the way change really happens. And I don't think we have to change the world. I just think the only thing, something beautiful happens when we open our hearts and open our spaces to have open conversations with people where we actually listen to them and care about what they think, where we don't where we're not thinking of our answers while they're talking, where we're just literally listening and giving platform to what people are saying to a world that's listening with us. So if you like that, please share it. If you want to be one of the people that has a conversation, contact me. I'm available all through, and I'll put all my contact places in the show notes as well. And I want to just circle around again. If you're feeling in a place of trauma, and you want somebody to help you and you feel drawn to the way Marla's presented today, contact her. Why not? If you feel like you want a moment of inspiration, or you want to be uplifted, or you want something to help you look into your sort of destiny, or read a card, what a tarot card reading might do, contact her. If you've never had a card reading and don't even know what it is, contact her. Why not? Why not start to change the way we do some of the things we do and see what we see differently? And then again, the final thing that I always ask everybody who's listening: we have no idea the impact of what happens when we just walk up to somebody and say, "How are you?" Not with a thought to try and fix them or change them or help them or govern them or lead them or correct them, but just with a simple, beautiful intention of just really giving a darn about how they're doing. I invite you and challenge each one of you listening to find someone you don't know either virtually online or in person. And just ask them, how you doing? And just listen. Let them tell you how they're doing. And have a conversation with them, but not a conversation where you share too much of yourself. You can share as much as you want of yourself. But the goal of this conversation is that you listen to them. If we do that, people who were strangers will become friends. And when we live in a world of strangers, it's a different world than we live in when we live in a world of friends. Don't be strangers. Invite people to be your friends. And until the next stranger shows up here. Well, before I go, Marla, is there one last thing you want to say to people that you haven't got a chance to say?
No, thank you. Fare thee well. Be safe and be well.
Perfect.
Be healthy.
Perfect. So, thank you all for being here with us. Thank you for listening. And until the next stranger shows up in this room, don't be a stranger. Go up to somebody and make them your friend. Invite them to be your friend. Thank you. Ciao.